Namaste and welcome, everyone. You're listening to our UPSC News Analysis for the 14th of May, 2025. In this deep dive, we'll be breaking down the key current affairs from yesterday. We'll explain the basic concepts you need to know and really highlight those issues important for your UPSC mains exam. Think of this as your focus guide to grasp the essentials quickly.
Namaste. Yes, it's quite a mix today. We've got macroeconomics, like inflation, some important legal rulings, and even fundamental rights issues cropping up.
Absolutely. It really shows how interconnected everything is, doesn't it?
It does. Governance, economy, society, it's all linked.
Okay, let's get started then. First up, a pretty significant economic development. Retail inflation has dropped quite a bit.
Indeed. The headline number is 3.16% for CPI-based retail inflation in April 2025. That's quite low.
3.16%. How low are we talking?
Well, it's the lowest it's been in 69 months. So that takes us back to, October 2018, almost 6 years.
Wow. Okay. So just to quickly recap for everyone, retail inflation.
Right. Basically, it's the speed at which prices for everyday things, goods, services that households like yours consume are going up. We measure it using the CPI, the Consumer Price Index.
And the base year we use for that calculation in India is still 2012, correct?
That's correct, 2012. And it's important, to distinguish between headline inflation that covers everything and core inflation.
Core inflation being?
That's when you take out the volatile stuff, mainly food and fuel prices. And interestingly, while headline inflation fell sharply, core inflation was, moderate, around 3.3%.
3.3. So maybe underlying pressures haven't completely vanished.
That could be one interpretation, yes.
Yeah.
It suggests some stickiness there.
And how does this fit into the bigger picture, like with the RBI's targets?
Good question. The RBI, through its Monetary Policy Committee, the MPC, aims for 4% inflation, with a band of plus or minus 2%. That's their main goal for price stability.
So 3.16 is well below the lower end of that band.
Exactly. It's below that 2 to 6% range, which certainly gives the RBI more thinking room, perhaps for policy changes down the line.
What actually drove this decrease? Any specific areas?
The data points towards falling prices for vegetables, also fuel and housing costs. That seems to be the main mix.
Okay. And I saw something about urban versus rural inflation.
Yes, a noticeable difference. Urban inflation was at 3.53%, while rural was lower at 2.87%. Could be different buying patterns, maybe different price movements in those areas.
Now, the government has tools to manage inflation, doesn't it? Beyond just the RBI.
Oh, absolutely. The MPC framework itself is key. But then you have things like the Essential Commodities Act that lets the government regulate supply and distribution of key goods.
Great.
There's also the Price Stabilization Fund, the PSF, mainly for perishable items like onions and potatoes to cushion price shocks.
And things like food security schemes.
Yes. Schemes like PMGKA play a role, especially in protecting vulnerable groups from food price spikes. And we've seen past actions too, like fuel price adjustments, cutting excise duties. Those all fit in.
So let's connect this to the mains exam.
Yeah.
What are the critical takeaways for aspirants?
Well, first, the issues. While the headline drop is good news, you still have relatively high food inflation in things like pulses and cereals. That's sticky.
Okay.
Then there's the transmission lag, how long it takes for RBI rate cuts, if they happen, to actually lower borrowing costs for people and businesses. Plus, high unemployment might mean lower inflation doesn't boost demand as much as hoped.
Makes sense. And the impacts?
Economically, it potentially gives the RBI scope for rate cuts to boost growth. Politically, it can help ease public discontent about living costs. Socially, it's direct relief, especially for the poor and fixed income groups. And governance-wise, it suggests some policy coordination is working.
Is there an ethical angle here too?
Definitely. Inflation hits the poor hardest. So managing it effectively is really about distributive justice. It's an ethical duty for the state.
Looking ahead, what's the path forward likely to be?
The consensus seems to be strengthening food supply chains, boosting farm productivity, more storage, cold chains, the structural things.
Right, the long-term fixes.
Exactly. Monetary policy will likely be cautious. They'll watch global oil prices, El Nino impacts. Fiscal prudence remains crucial too.
Okay, and for prelims, quick facts to remember.
Key things. CPI base year, 2012. The April 2025 CPI figure, 3.16%. The core inflation figure, 3.3%. The tools used to control inflation, monetary policy repo rate, PSF, ECA, and the MPC target range, 4%, again in line 2%.
Got it. That's a comprehensive look at the inflation situation. Okay, let's shift gears now to international trade. India's notifying the WTO about tariffs on U.S. imports. What's happening there?
Yes, another significant move.
Right.
On May 13th, India officially told the World Trade Organization, the WTO, about its plan. They intend to put tariffs worth about $235 million on certain goods coming from the U.S.
Okay, so the WTO is the global trade rulemaker, and tariffs are basically import taxes, right? Used for protection or sometimes retaliation.
Precisely. And under WTO rules, countermeasures, which is what India is calling this, are permitted in certain situations. It's distinct from, say, safeguard measures, which are temporary protections against import surges.
And why is India doing this now? What's the trigger?
It's a direct response to the U.S. continuing to impose tariffs on Indian steel and aluminium imports. Those U.S. tariffs were put in place using Section 232 of their Trade Expansion Act, citing national security.
Ah, the Section 232 tariffs. Right.
India argues those U.S. tariffs violate WTO rules. So India is essentially saying, okay, since you're continuing with these, we are exercising our right to retaliate with our own tariffs.
What are some of the Indian government initiatives relevant here, besides the specific action?
Well, India's overall trade policy aims to protect domestic producers but also stay WTO compliant. Then there's the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan self-reliance, which fits with defending domestic industries strategically. Bilaterally, there's the India-U.S. Trade Policy Forum, the TPF, which is meant for resolving these kinds of disputes. And broader initiatives like Make in India and the PLI schemes aim to reduce import dependence in general.
So, for the Maine's perspective on this trade issue, what are the key points?
Several issues to consider. First, the balancing act. How does India retaliate effectively without harming the wider strategic relationship with the U.S., especially given reliance on U.S. tech and services?
That's a tricky one.
It is. Also, the WTO dispute process itself can be very slow, so relying solely on that has its limitations.
And the impacts.
Economically, it could affect exporters and importers on both sides, influence commodity prices. In terms of international relations, it could definitely strain Indo-U.S. ties, maybe impacting tech or defense cooperation. Domestically, there's likely political support for protecting Indian industry. Geopolitically, it's part of India navigating its strategic autonomy versus global integration.
Is there a specific ethical or legal angle we should note?
The main one is WTO compliance. India is framing its action within WTO rules, emphasizing adherence to the rule-based global trading order.
And looking forward, what's the likely approach? More tariffs or negotiation?
Probably a mix. Pushing for a bilateral solution via the TPF seems likely. Diversifying export markets is always a good strategy to reduce dependence. Maybe some strategic tariff adjustments, but likely avoiding a full-blown trade war. And India will probably keep pushing for reforms at the WTO itself, particularly the dispute settlement system, plus continuing to build domestic capacity in key sectors.
Okay. Freelim's facts on this one.
Remember the tariff amount, $235 million, and the notification date, May 13th. Know the WTO's role, Section 232, that India's action is WTO-permitted retaliation, and be aware of policies like Atmanirbhar Bharat, TPF, and PLI schemes.
All right, comprehensive again. Let's move now to national security. There's news about something called Operation Sindoor and a statement from the Prime Minister.
Yes, this relates to India's response to terrorism challenges. On May 13th, Prime Minister Modi, speaking from Adampur Air Base, referred to the ceasefire with Pakistan along the line of control, the Lasshi, as just a pause. This statement came after something called Operation Sindoor.
Operation Sindoor, what was that?
According to the reports, it was a military operation India conducted following a major terror attack in Pahalgam, which tragically killed 26 civilians.
Right, okay. And the ceasefire agreement itself, just remind us.
That agreement dates back to 2003. It's meant to maintain peace along the Lasshi, but it's often been violated by firing and infiltration attempts.
And the PM's statement also mentioned not succumbing to nuclear threats?
Yes, he strongly emphasized that India wouldn't be deterred by what's sometimes termed nuclear blackmail, using nuclear capability as a threat. He reiterated a zero-tolerance policy towards terrorism, signals very assertive stance.
We've seen responses before, like the surgical strikes in Balakot. Are there other initiatives relevant here?
Absolutely. Those past operations are key precedents. Also important is the push for jointness among the armed forces under the Chief of Defense Staff, the CDS. That's crucial for coordinated operations. Then there's the strengthening of legal tools like the UAPA and the NIA for counterterrorism. And improving border infrastructure, like at Adampur, boosts preparedness. Plus, modernizing defense, like acquiring the S-400 system.
Okay, linking this to Maine's again, what are the key issues?
The core issues are persistent cross-border terrorism, the very real risks of nuclear escalation in the region, and the difficult balance in places like Kashmir between civilian safety and military strategy.
And the impacts of this more assertive posture.
Security-wise, it sends a strong message, might deter infiltration for a while. On the IR front, it definitely raises tensions with Pakistan, could invite more international, maybe U.S., calls for de-escalation or mediation. Domestically, strong security stances often play into political narratives. For the military, it boosts morale and highlights readiness.
What about the ethical or governance angle?
Key considerations there are proportionality and response under international law, and the constant challenge of protecting civilians while maintaining strategic credibility against ongoing threats.
And the way forward from here, what's suggested?
Strengthening intelligence, better coordination with local police is crucial, developing cross-border capabilities but always stressing proportionality, maintaining a robust nuclear deterrent, diplomatically isolating Pakistan on terror financing, and maybe using Track 2 diplomacy, unofficial channels to manage tensions.
Preling's pointers for this.
No Operation Sindoor and its trigger, the Pahalgam attack, the ceasefire agreement year 2003, Adampur Air Base location, S-400 origin, Russia, and the purpose of DGMO talks, de-escalation.
Right. Staying with J&K, India has also firmly rejected any U.S. mediation claims.
That's correct. On the same day, May 13th, the Ministry of External Affairs, the MEA, dismissed reports suggesting the U.S. was trying to mediate between India and Pakistan on Jammu and Kashmir.
This connects to the principle of bilateralism, doesn't it?
Exactly. India's long-standing position, especially after abrogating Article 370, is that J&K is an internal matter, and any issues with Pakistan must be resolved bilaterally just between the two countries, as agreed in the Shimla Agreement of 1972 and the Lahore Declaration of 1999. India consistently rejects third-party involvement.
So why did the MEA feel the need to reaffirm this now?
It seems there were some subtle hints or reports about potential U.S. quiet diplomacy efforts, perhaps linked to the tensions after Operation Sindoor and the ceasefire situation. So the MEA statement was a clear, strong reiteration of India's established policy.
What other government actions reflect this stance?
Well, the abrogation of Article 370 itself in 2019 was fundamental, the reorganization into UTs, consistently stating the bilateral position at global forums like the UN, BRICS, SKO. It also aligns with broader doctrines like neighborhood first and strategic autonomy. Plus, practical measures like strengthening Law C controls reinforce the focus on internal management and direct engagement with Pakistan only when appropriate.
And the main relevance of this diplomatic stance.
Key issues include Pakistan's continuous efforts to internationalize the issue, India managing its strategic autonomy while engaging with powers like the U.S., and the internal challenge of ensuring security alongside democratic processes in J&K.
How does this assertion impact things?
In IR, it asserts sovereignty and policy consistency. Security-wise, it reinforces the national narrative against external interference and cross-border issues. Politically, it resonates with nationalist sentiment. Diplomatically, it projects India as a sovereign decision-maker.
Are there ethical or governance dimensions to consider?
Yes, asserting territorial integrity is seen as a core constitutional duty. But there's also the governance aspect of balancing this with international expectations and ensuring people-centric approaches within the region.
What's the likely way forward for India's J&K policy in this context?
Assertive diplomacy globally to counter narratives. Focus on development and governance within J&K. Avoiding overdependence on any single power for validation. And perhaps continuing Track 2 channels for managing Pakistan relations, even while formally rejecting mediation.
Prelims takeaways.
Shimla Agreement year, 1972. Article 370 abrogation date, August 5, 2019. India's stance on U.S. mediation, rejection, Law C status, de facto boundary, and MEA's responsibility for foreign policy.
Okay, let's shift focus now to a significant legal verdict from Tamil Nadu, the Pollachi sexual assault case.
Yes, a very important judgment. On May 13th, a Mahila court in Coimbatore sentenced all 9 accused in the Pollachi case to life imprisonment. This case, which surfaced back in 2019, involved horrific blackmail and sexual exploitation, often using social media.
What laws were central to this case?
Several were invoked. The POCSO Act, Protection of Children from Sexual Offenses, IPC Section 376 for rape, and the IT Act, given the use of digital platforms for coercion.
What was particularly significant about this verdict?
The court specifically highlighted the immense psychological trauma the victim suffered. And getting life sentences for all 9 accused marks a rare, comprehensive conviction in a case that unfortunately saw many delays and caused huge public outrage.
Are there government initiatives aimed at tackling such crimes?
Yes, several important ones. The criminal law amendments in 2013 and 2018 brought in much stricter penalties for sexual offenses. The Nirpaya Fund was set up specifically for women's safety projects and victim support.
Right, and the one-stop centers.
Exactly. The Saki Centers provide integrated support, legal, medical, counseling. Fast-track special courts, FTSCs, were established to speed up trials in rape and POCSO cases. And there's the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal for online offenses.
Connecting this to Maine's, what are the broader issues highlighted by this case?
It really throws light on trial delays, which is a huge problem. The rise of cybercrimes against women, often hampered by weak digital forensics. And the persistent issue of victim shaming and societal stigma that prevents reporting.
And the impacts of such a strong verdict.
Socially, it can help restore faith in justice and act as a deterrent. Governance-wise, it validates mechanisms like FTSCs and Mahila courts. Ethically, it emphasizes survivor-centric justice and compassion. Politically, it shows state accountability is possible.
What about the core ethical dimensions?
It really boils down to fundamental principles: dignity, consent, delivering justice, and the state's absolute duty to protect its citizens, especially the vulnerable.
What are the steps needed moving forward?
Timely justice's key requires more judicial resources, better digital forensics. Awareness campaigns on digital safety and consent are crucial. Better rehabilitation support for survivors. More gender-sensitive policing. Maybe even using AI for pattern detection and prevention.
Prelims, facts to remember.
Kalachi case origin year, exposed 2019. Conviction date, May 13, 2025. Number convicted, 9. Relevant laws, POCSO, IPC 376, IT Act. Key initiatives, Nearby a Fund, One-Stop Centers, FTSCs, and what a Mahila court is, Special Court for Crimes Against Women.
Okay. Next up, we have a controversy involving the Haryana Women's Panel and a professor from Ashoka University.
Yes, this occurred on May 13th. The Haryana State Commission for Women summoned an Ashoka University professor over alleged controversial remarks about Hindu deities made during a panel discussion. This really brings the tension between academic freedom and religious sensitivities into focus.
Let's break down the principles here. Academic freedom versus freedom of speech.
Right. Academic freedom is about scholars expressing ideas in their field without censorship. Freedom of speech under Article 19.1 is broader for all citizens, but has restrictions under 19.2, public order, decency, religious sentiments, etc. And there's the crucial difference between critical speech, which is vital for discourse, and hate speech, which aims to incite hatred or violence.
What happened after the remarks were made?
They were shared widely online, sparking considerable backlash. The Women's Commission took notice, finding the remarks derogatory and hurt sentiments, and issued the summons demanding an explanation.
What regulations or government bodies are relevant in such cases?
The UGC has guidelines on academic autonomy. The IT Rules 2021 regulate online speech. Women's commissions have powers to investigate grievances and summon people. And NEP 2020 talks about critical thinking and values, but interpretation can vary.
So for Maine's, what are the key issues this incident raises?
It clearly highlights the challenge of balancing academic freedom with religious sensitivities. It prones to perhaps rising intolerance and the politicization of academic spaces. And the ambiguity in defining where legitimate critique ends and offensive speech begins is a major challenge.
And the impacts.
Societally, it can deepen polarization. Politically, it touches on nationalism, secularism, and state-controlled debates. Governance-wise, you see tension between institutional autonomy and state bodies asserting authority.
Ethical and governance considerations.
It's that classic dilemma, truth versus peace. How do you balance the pursuit of academic inquiry with preventing social friction? And upholding constitutional morality-free expression versus potentially strong majority sentiment is a constant governance challenge.
What could be a way forward to navigate these sensitive issues better?
More structured dialogues could help build understanding. Maybe clearer guidelines on acceptable academic speech, though that's difficult. Ensuring commissions function nonpartisanship is crucial. Better internal grievance mechanisms within universities themselves, and definitely stronger civic education on both free expression and tolerance.
Key prelims pointers here.
Article 19.1 and 19.2, the role of the Haryana State Commission for Women. Ashoka University status, private. Relevant laws rules like IT rules, UGC guidelines, IPC on hate speech.
Okay, let's shift focus again, this time to Mumbai. There's resistance to a waste-to-energy plant in Govandi.
Yes, on May 13th, residents in Govandi protested a proposed waste-to-energy, or WTE, plant. This highlights the clash between urban development needs, environmental worries, and social justice.
So WTE plants convert waste into energy, usually by burning it.
Essentially, yes, through controlled combustion or similar processes. And Govandi is already a tough spot, densely populated, poor air quality, right next to the huge old DNR landfill. This brings in the concept of environmental justice, the idea that no single community should bear an unfair burden of pollution.
What exactly are the residents worried about?
Primarily, more pollution, air, and water, adding to what they already face from DNR. They fear health hazards, maybe even displacement. There's a strong call from them and civil society for more decentralized waste management, like local composting and recycling, instead of large-scale incineration.
What rules or initiatives govern waste management in India?
Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0 actually promotes scientific waste processing, including WTE. The Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 are key. They mandate source segregation, composting, and minimizing landfill use.
And the NGT.
The National Green Tribunal plays a big role in enforcing safeguards, setting limits on incineration. MOE FCC sets emission norms for these plants. And ultimately, the urban local bodies, the municipalities, are responsible for the infrastructure.
What are the main issues for UPSC mains that emerge from this?
It's the classic health versus development dilemma. The vulnerability of the urban poor, who often live near such facilities. Concerns about inadequate public consultation before projects are approved. And questions about how effectively emissions are monitored and controlled in practice.
And the impacts.
Socially, you see rising environmental awareness and community resistance. Governance-wise, it puts the spotlight on ULB transparency and participation. Environmentally, potential pollution from dioxins, furans, particulate matter is a real concern. Economically, WTE can be costly, especially if waste isn't properly segregated at source.
Ethical considerations.
The core issue is balancing the right to clean air and health against the push for infrastructure, and the principle of informed consent ensuring communities genuinely participate in decisions affecting them.
How can we move forward on this? Better solutions.
Promoting decentralized methods seems key. Rigorous EIAs and genuine public hearings are non-negotiable. Investing in cleaner WTE tech with strict emission controls and monitoring, transparency with data, and clear rehabilitation plans if needed, and really pushing citizen-led segregation efforts.
Prelims facts for Govandi.
Know Govandi's location, Mumbai, and context, near DNR. Key aspects of SWM Rules 2016, NGT's role, how WE plants work, basically, and the key pollutants of concern, dioxins, furans.
All right, let's turn to education now. The CBSE results are out.
Yes, declared on May 13th for Class 10 and 12, these results always give us important indicators like the overall pass percentage and, significantly, any gender disparity. And we should view this through the lens of NEP 2020, which aims for equity in addressing such gaps.
What were the headline numbers this year? Pass percentages.
A slight increase overall. Class 12 saw 87.5% pass, and Class 10 was 93.2%. But the gender gap persists.
Girls doing better again?
Yes, significantly. Girls outperformed boys by 6.4 percentage points in Class 10 and 5.3 points in Class 12. The results also showed continuing disparities between rural and urban areas and between government and private schools.
What government programs aim to tackle these issues?
Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan is the main integrated scheme for school education. Kastuba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, KGBVs, are residential schools for disadvantaged girls. NEP 2020 introduced the Gender Inclusion Fund, JEFIF. NEP Bharat focuses on foundational literacy and numeracy, and the Performance Grading Index, PGI, assesses state school education systems.
So for mains analysis, what are the underlying issues these results point to?
The persistent gender gap is interesting. Why are boys lagging even as girls' enrollment is up? Could be social constraints, dropout rates. The urban-rural divide highlights resource inequality. And there's the question of whether high pass rates translate into real skills and employability.
Impacts to consider.
Socially, girls' success is positive, but there's immense performance pressure on all students. Governance-wise, it shows where interventions like counseling or vocational training are needed. Politically, education being a concurrent subject means center-state cooperation is vital.
And the ethical perspective.
It's fundamentally about ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education for every child, aligning with the SDG 4. Addressing disparities is a matter of social justice.
What's the way forward to improve outcomes and reduce gaps?
Targeted interventions for gender and rural gaps, maybe digital equity focus, encouraging holistic development, sports, arts, life skills, better career guidance, ensuring teacher training and infrastructure keep pace with reforms, and using data effectively, PGI, UDIs plus NI, to guide policy.
Prelims facts from CBSE results.
Note the 2025 pass percentages, 12th, 87.5%, 10th, 93.2%. The extent of girls' outperformance, 6.4% in 10th, 5.3% in 12th. NEP 2020 goals, key schemes, Samagra Shiksha, KGBV, GIF, NEP and Bharat, and the purpose of PGI.
Okay, moving towards the end now, a big announcement from Rajasthan about government recruitment.
That's right. On May 13th, the Rajasthan government announced plans to fill a massive 1.88 lakh posts across various departments. Public sector employment is still hugely important in India for service delivery and socioeconomic reasons.
How does government recruitment usually work?
Through state public service commissions, various selection boards, or direct recruitment based on rules, usually involves exams, sometimes interviews. There's also the concept of employment elasticity, how many jobs are created for a given level of GDP growth.
1.88 lakh posts. That's huge. Which sectors and why now?
It spans education, health, police, forest, general administration. The scale is massive, and yes, it comes ahead of state elections. The government is framing it as governance reform and an economic stimulus. Police and forest departments are apparently getting accelerated hiring.
Are there relevant national initiatives?
Things like Skill India and Rozgar Melas focus on employability. Digital India creates some tech-based roles. The NPS, new pension scheme, is relevant for the fiscal side of hiring. An e-recruitment portal streamline the process.
What are the key main issues related to this?
It touches on educated unemployment, which is high. The fiscal strain on the state budget is a major consideration. And the backlog of vacancies that affects public service delivery.
And potential impacts.
Economically, it could boost demand. Socially, better access to services if posts are filled effectively. Politically, it could influence voter sentiment. Governance-wise, potential for improved efficiency.
Ethical or governance lens here.
Merit-based recruitment is crucial, upholding Article 16 on equal opportunity in public employment. Avoiding politicization and ensuring fairness and transparency are paramount.
What's the way forward for Rajasthan to manage this?
Timely, merit-based selection is key, protecting institutional autonomy. Using data to target recruitment to areas of need. Proper induction and training. Fiscal responsibility linking hiring to budget capacity. And better interdepartmental HR coordination.
Prelims facts for Rajasthan recruitment.
The number, 1.88 lakh, and the state, Rajasthan. Key sectors, education, health, police, etc. Relevant Article 16. Key initiatives, Skill India, NPS, e-recruitment. The purpose, employment generation, service delivery.
All right, our final topic for today. A seminar cancellation at Kerala University raising free speech concerns again.
Yes, on May 13th, Kerala University administration canceled a seminar citing security and political sensitivity. This immediately brings up Article 19(1)(a) on free speech and its restrictions in 19(2), and again, the crucial principle of academic freedom.
What was the seminar about, and what was the reaction to the cancellation?
The topic was reportedly cast politics and communalism in higher education, definitely a sensitive area. Apparently, there was backlash from some student groups. Critics see the cancellation as another sign of shrinking academic space and potential state influence over universities.
What government bodies or policies relate to this?
UGC guidelines on academic autonomy exist. NEP 2020 promotes critical thinking and constitutional values. The National Commission for Scheduled Castes, NCSC, looks into discrimination issues. Universities have internal complaint committees, but their effectiveness can vary.
Key mains issues arising from this.
The increasing politicization of campuses, a potential chilling effect, deterring open discussion on vital social issues. And the lack of robust, consistently applied safeguards for academic freedom, especially in state universities.
Impacts.
Socially, it limits discourse on key challenges like caste. Governance-wise, it can erode institutional credibility. Politically, it highlights the tension between rights and state control.
Ethical concerns.
Again, it's balancing free inquiry against sensitivities. Who decides what's too sensitive or a security risk? And the need to uphold constitutional morality and free thought, especially in academic settings, which should foster critical engagement.
What could be done to prevent such situations or handle them better?
Maybe stronger statutory protections for academic freedom, more transparency when events are canceled, greater student-faculty participation in university governance, independent panels for speech disputes, and strengthening constitutional literacy and a culture of dialogue.
Prelims pointers for the Kerala University case.
Article 19(1). Aim of the university. NEP 2020 relevance. Relevant bodies, UGC, NCSC. Key issues. Academic freedom, state interference, caste discourse.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive for the 14th of May, 2025. We've covered a lot of ground today for UPSC aspirants.
We certainly have, from inflation figures and trade disputes.
National security developments, J&K policy affirmations, a significant court verdict.
Debates on academic freedom, environmental protests, education results, government jobs, and more challenges in higher education.
It really shows the breadth of issues you need to stay on top of.
Absolutely. Understanding these interconnections is key.
Right. So please subscribe for your daily updates and analysis. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so do leave a comment below. And don't forget, you can join our Telegram channel. The link is right there in the description. You can read the news we discussed and also solve a quiz based on today's analysis. Thank you for joining us. Jai Hind.